Imagine you wake up and you have this feeling of your heart racing and your breathing feels so abnormal. Nobody seems to be chasing you or anyone screaming at you, but you feel like something is wrong. Have you ever found yourself in such situation? And what could this feeling be all about? Hello, lovers. Welcome back to the Jalicious podcast. This is a community of learning, and the focus still remains building the best version of ourselves. My name is Mrs. Joy Yokochukwu, your host on this show. All right, on today's segment, we'll be having a little twist on our way of learning. And today we'll be talking about a feeling that most times people tend to run away or tend to ignore, but is actually something that we need to pay attention to. God Himself placed it in man in order to create a balance in the way we live. Okay, I'll start by sharing a little story that I seem to have heard from somewhere. It's about a young woman or a lady who has been living a successful life. She had a beautiful home, a husband, beautiful kids, a successful business running. And on this fateful day, she was going about her normal routine, and all of a sudden she slumped and passed out. When she woke up, she found herself in the hospital. Series of tests were conducted on her, and the result of the test is something we are going to be looking at today. And that is something that we call a silent companion that seems to be around us. Most times it seems like it is not obvious, but it is there with us. It's a kind of thing that indicates that we need to take out some time to rest or take out some time to focus on ourselves and handle some things that are important. And this is what we call stress. I'd like us to begin by looking at the definition of what this word means, which is stress. I have it written down on my jotter in order to guide me on how to discuss about this topic. Stress can be defined as a state of worry or mental tension caused by a difficult situation. It is also defined as the body's response to a challenge or demand, leading to physical, mental, or emotional tension that potentially impacts our health. So, this feeling of stress, like I said earlier, is a feeling that has been put into man by God, and is a kind of a sign, a warning sign that the body needs some time to relax or rest. It shows that you have overworked your body, and it is a time that the body is saying, okay, I'm tired, I need some breakout time or some free time in order to get back the energy at which I have expelled. So it's a normal feeling. Although some persons will be like, I wish there is nothing like stress. Like some persons like me that I don't like being in a position of being stressed. I just don't like being stressed. So, but it's actually there to help us, to give us that idea that we need to maintain a balance, or indicate that, oh, this is a time that I need to relax in order to focus on, replenishing the energy that has been expelled. Also, when we talk about this stress, there are a lot of things that has to do with this stress that we may not even know. When we talk about it leading to some potential health issues, there are times that you hear people say they have diabetes. Most times or sometimes, this issue of diabetes might not necessarily be because they are prone to, or they have been eating a lot of sugary substance or a lot of starchy food. It might just be from a lot of stress. It might just be that they have placed themselves in a lot of stress, body stress, emotional stress, mental stress, that has brought about this issue. So this word or this topic is something that we really need to pay attention. Remember that this podcast is all about building the best version of ourselves. When you are all about stressing yourself, putting yourself in a place of not even listening to this warning sign of, oh, I need to go and rest. Even a machine needs some time to relax or cool off so that you can use it for a longer time. When you tend putting yourself in a long time of stress, you worn out your system. And if you pay attention to some persons that are always in a position of being stressed out, if you really take note of those people, you see that most of the times they don't even last long on earth. You see them dying prematurely or dying in a short time. So when you give yourself always in a position of stress and not paying attention to those warning signs that your body are giving to you, your body is giving to you, you end up losing out. And God wants us to live on earth in order to express that which he has given to us. So imagine you die before the time God has made it for you to be, just because you didn't listen to that feeling, you didn't pay attention to those warning signs. How will it be? It is of no profit to you or even to God or even to humanity. So it's something that we really need to pay attention. It's not something that we should be ignorant of or ignore. It's something that we should actually pay attention to. Okay, back to the story we shared earlier on about a young woman who suddenly passed out and was taken to the hospital. This woman was not really aware that she has gotten to the state of a chronic level of stress. Probably the body must have been sending some signals to show that her body was already stressed out, but she may not have understood, or she just ignored those signs and it got to that dangerous state. So this brings us to the next point, and that is symptoms of stress. How do we know that our body is stressed out, or how do we know that we are stressed out? Now let me bring it to how our body works. There are two hormones that actually works in this state in order to help us to understand that our body are in this state, and these two hormones are called the adrenaline and the cortisol. How do they work? When we find ourselves in that tense area, or our body is kind of tired by the workload we have placed on it, it sends these signals. That's where we begin to feel an increase of our heart rate, or our breathing becomes abnormal, we find ourselves being tensed, and some other feelings like that. You have headaches and the rest. These are the signs that you are tense or you are stressed, sorry. And it also brings about this level of depression. And like we said in our last video, we said that some persons might find themselves depressed without even knowing it, because being depressed is just beyond that statement of being a mental sickness or a mental illness, whereby you think that you are just feeling suicidal and the rest. Bringing it in a normal terms or a layman terms, being depressed just means that you are retarded. When you stretch a rubber band, it gets to a level that it cannot carry the load again, so it breaks out. So in our body as well, when we keep on placing a level of load on our body, it gets to that point of no return. That's the workload that we are placing on our body becomes too much for it to handle, so it breaks down. So the most dangerous state or effect of stress is that it leads to death. So when you hear that people just suddenly slump and die, it might not necessarily be a spiritual attack. It might not necessarily be something that we are thinking about. This individual might be perfectly okay. His immune system might be okay. Everything about him might be okay. But because of the level of stress this individual has induced on his body, it leads to a total shutdown of the entire system at once. So you see that the more you give yourself to continuous stress, you bring about a difficult state in your body, which is death. Okay, moving further on this topic, I would like us to bear this in mind, and that is stress is a warning sign. So whenever you find yourself feeling these symptoms that we have earlier on mentioned, know that you are in that state of being stressed, and is a warning sign to call yourself back to a place of rest. Now, I want us to look at some issues or some reasons why some persons might ignore these signals or these warning signs. Number one point is that they need to meet up or complete a task within a time limit. There are some individuals, because of the kind of work they have found themselves, or maybe because of the job opportunities or where they are working, and they have been given a task to complete, or even as a student, you need to cover up a particular course and the exam is already coming so fast or very close by, and you need to cover up a wide range of study or books or textbook. Because of the task, you tend to ignore the signs or those warning signs of your body is stressed out. I had my own experience when I was in secondary school. I found myself in a place of stress. Okay, before I go into this story, I would like to read other points or reasons why we tend to ignore stress. Then I will go back to my own personal experiences and how I was able to handle them. The second reason why some persons might ignore this warning sign of stress is not wanting to be seen as a weak person. Some persons, because of this idea of, I don't want to be seen as a weakling, I don't want to be seen at my weak state, even when they know that they are totally worn out, they still want to come out as a strong individual, forming they are the strong man in the family or in the society. They don't want to be seen as that weak person, so they tend to ignore the sign and be tagged strong man. But in the normal sense, you are not supposed to continue like this. You have to pay attention to that warning sign. The next point, or another reason why some individual might ignore this sign of stress, is social expectation or wanting to please people. In our last podcast or episode, we talked about paying attention to self, and we said that when you are always wanting to do things not because of love, but you are trying to please everyone, which I told us that it is not possible to please everybody, you will get tired and you end up being depressed. Then the next point about the reason why people tend to ignore this warning sign of stress, is peer pressure. Peer pressure, it has actually led some persons into the wrong way of handling stress, because there are people that will end up taking some painkillers or some stimulants in order to ignore the feelings of being stressed. When you are stressed out, there are a lot of signs. Like I mentioned earlier, you might even find yourself having continuous headache, you are having this feeling of anxiety and the rest. So some individual, because of peer pressure, their friends or whoever is around might tell them, okay, why not take this, and okay, you need to be here, you need to be out, you need to socialize with people, you need to be all out. And this individual finds himself, I need to go home, I need to do this, but because of the friends and the need to socialize with people or be among, you end up looking for another thing in order to step up. And you see them taking some, even as common as paracetamol, it has a negative effect. I told us that stress is not just something that is physical, it can be mental, it can be internal. When you are inducing a lot of work on your body, on your system, it gets to a time that it gets to a point of no return, where there is a total shutdown of the entire system. This individual might end up taking paracetamol, and the continuous abuse of this painkiller might get to a point that it affects your brain, it affects other things that should not have been. And you can see some persons take even caffeine. When you abuse these things that are common, like paracetamol, Panadol, caffeine, or you call it coffee, or you take some stimulants like cocaine and the rest, some hard drugs, in order to bring yourself to that point of ignoring those signs, you end up leading yourself to a much difficult state or a more chronic state of stress that might end up to your death. From this point, we realize that ignoring stress does not have any good effect, does not have any good benefit on us. So if you really want to come out as the best version of yourself, you have to really pay attention to those warning signs. Remember, we said earlier on that God was the one that placed that feeling in us, because you understand that there is even God himself in Genesis. After creation, the scripture told us that, and God did what? Rested. So if God himself would find some time to rest, how much more we humans? So it's very important that we take us some time to rest. We must not always stress ourselves. Yes, there are times that you need to sacrifice, maybe just to meet up, but not all the time. You have to intentionally create a balance. You must be intentional about creating and maintaining balance in your life. All right, I said earlier that I was sharing a story, a personal encounter. I've already shared one story of something I heard. I don't know how true that was, but this one is personal. So I have my own way of, I have experienced stress. Like, I don't think there is anybody on earth that has not experienced stress. So it's common. It's something that is very common. But the issue that the point at which this episode was created is for us to pay attention to it and know how to handle it. Okay, so my experience, I have to experience secondary school and how I was able to handle stress in my university years, and till now how I do handle it whenever I feel that sign or those warning sign of stress. Okay, my secondary school, I was always wanting to be at the top because it was a kind of a competitive state for me. It was not as easy for me when I was in primary school, when I'm always on the first. When I got to the secondary school, it was a tough time that if you don't read, if you don't study hard, someone else will take your position. I'm not always finding myself at the first, but I find myself among the top. All right, so I had this expectation that I needed to cover a wide range of subjects within a limited time. Remember, I told us that one of the reasons why we tend to ignore the sign of stress is just that need in order to complete a task within a limited time. So I found myself in that state. And around that time, my elder sister just newly got married and she was heavily pregnant. So I had to, handle the things at home and also go over to her place to, assist in the little ways I could. And during those times, I do come back from school very late in the evening. So I'll do the things I'm needed to do at home, go over to her own place, and then come back and then still find a way to study. So that particular time or that particular period of time, I overheard some of my classmates saying that taking coffee can help you stay awake in the night to study. And I had this subject that was so broad that I needed to, cover up within a short time. It was not like the exam was the next day or anytime soon, but I just wanted to have enough time to read. So that particular night, I was already tired, I was already exhausted, and the right thing I could have done, the best thing that I could have done at that point was just to have a good rest or sleep, but I needed to read. So I went out, bought the coffee, and I took that coffee. And the funny thing is that after taking the coffee, my system never remained the same. It was not something my body could handle. For someone else, they might not feel the kind of effect I felt at that time because of how my body functions. Some persons it might even take them some years. It might take some person years or months before they get to that point whereby their brain will say, I can't handle this. So at that point, it felt like I was working with my head. So everything was just not working properly. So I wasted my time. I did not read that night. I could not sleep well. So because of something I needed to do, ignoring stress, I was not still in the position to achieve what I wanted to achieve till I had a proper rest. Then another time in the university, I always find myself whenever I'm overreading or studying so much and I find myself having headache or feeling those signs of stress, maybe not just from reading or maybe some activities during the day, and then later on I know that I'm stressed. There are certain things I do. I have already learned my lesson from my experience in secondary school, so I had to find other ways that would be better. So just for us that are listening to this now, the best way is not for you to take some stimulants or some drugs or some things in order to ignore those things. There are better ways to handle it, and the best way to handle stress is rest or a time of relaxation. So that was what I took note of. That was the way I had to manage stress in my university days. So whenever I find myself stressed, what I do is that I take my earpiece. I make sure that I was never lacking an earpiece. So what I do whenever I find myself in that state, I take my phone, I put on a very free clothes or outfit. Then in the cool of the evening, I'll take my earpiece and then I'll take a walk. It might just take me like 5 or 10 minutes, but after that exercise, I'll get back to whatever I'm doing and I will feel very light and very okay to complete whatever tasks I am meant to complete. The body has been made to function in a way that there must be a balance. I think in physics, there's a law that states for every action, there must be an equal reaction. So if the body is giving out a level of energy, it is expecting to receive an amount of energy to replenish that worn out on, and also have enough for the further or for the future work that is coming. Alright, before we conclude on this segment, I would like to highlight on some of the key points from everything we have been discussing or we've been talking about from the beginning of this episode, and that is stress was meant to be by God. And if God took some time to rest, that is, we also have to take some time to rest. And also, whenever you find yourself with these warning signs, please take out some time. That 5 minutes rest is very, very important. And also, we already highlighted some of the reasons why some persons ignore stress. Now you've learned that there is no benefit in ignoring stress. Don't allow it to get to that chronic state. The woman we talked about, or the story we shared about a woman who was rushed to the hospital, thank God she survived. Some persons may not survive it. Don't be among those that will not survive it. Please pay attention to yourself. I'll be concluding by reading this statement to us as something that we can hold on to or embrace as we end this video, and that is: stress does not always scream, it sometimes whispers until one day it roars. Just like the story we shared earlier on about the woman who suddenly blacked out and was hospitalized. We don't need to allow stress to get to a place of chronic level for us to pay attention to stress. Give yourself some time to rest. And also, stress is not going anywhere. It is something that was meant to be by God, but we don't need to let it win. Remember, take some time to rest. Finally, I would like to encourage us to do well to like, share, and comment on this video. And if you are yet to follow us on this page on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel, please do well to do that. Till we come your way next time, remember that we are in the journey of building the best version of ourselves, and also give yourself enough time to rest. Bye.